Hello, another week, more input sessions and teaching practice from the CELTA Tutor. I'm going to actually try and open something here while I'm talking to you. So what happened this week? We had 2 input sessions per usual on Tuesday morning. They were about practice activities, and the second session was a language awareness session talking about tense and aspect. So the first one about practice activities, pretty much it was just like hands-on workshop style training that looked into, well, first drawing the analogy between a tennis lesson and a language lesson, because surprisingly, there's a lot of overlap. And relating that to different types of stages. So the tutor had some pictures about, the tennis instructor and showing different way. I don't know. I don't play tennis, so showing different ways of hitting the balls or whatever. I'm not really sure. And then the rest of the class was, or the input session was, with looking at controlled, less controlled, and freer practice. First, defining and categorizing those things, and then looking at several different types of printed materials and looking at what you can find in books, obviously, and then seeing seeing what type of practice there is, and the staging of it, etc. And then there were some reflection questions at the end, and I'm pulling up my other, because I wasn't writing the notes, I was actually typing my notes for the other one. And the second session was on language awareness, but focusing primarily on tense and aspect. So this was an interesting thing to watch, because some candidates have really good control over their, I don't think control is the appropriate way of saying that, have a higher level of language awareness, and some have misconceptions, but are very confident about the misconceptions that they have of some language aspects. And then some of them are just very insecure about their language awareness. So it was a range with this group, which was interesting. It was interesting to watch, to see how they progressed through, and to see what they assumptions that they made, and things that were new to them. So yeah, it was just an overall interesting session. Hang on, I'm pulling up the notes now, because I was typing them and not writing them. So we looked into the difference between time and tense, and the different, and how many tenses there are in English. Okay, that had a whole lot of discussion. Some people's minds were blown at that point. And then for task 1, the teachers were given some situations that they needed to develop sentences in different tenses that had different time references. And then what are aspects, and how many aspects are there in English? Again, some minds were being blown at that point. And there was another couple tasks that they had to look at a text, and there was a chart. And so they were looking for examples of tense and aspect, and checking those answers. And then there was another task where there was 3 activities from printed materials. Sorry, if you can hear my dog digging, she's building a nest for herself to have to have a little morning nap. She just woke up. We went outside, and now she's having another nap. So, so the last exercise, they had 3 tasks taken from printed materials, and they had to decide what was the focus of the activities. And then once they decided on if they were more focused on form, or if they were more focused on meaning, then they went back through the same activities, because they had the previous session on practice activities, and then they were categorizing things as controlled, less controlled, and freer. So they wrapped up the session with some completing the sentences, or sentence prompts. So A tense is defined by. English has different aspects. Time and tense can coincide. And timelines are good tools. So we also did look at timelines in this session. As far as the teaching practice, the teaching practice was better this week because if you remember last week, or if you're following this journey with me, last week we had some major technical issues. And this week it was better because there was not as many technical issues. So wonderful. They were able to, actually the Zoom platform was being slightly complicated last week, but most of it was because of poor connection. So that happens sometimes. And anyways, so this week, better connection, the classes ran a little bit smoother. And as a general reflection, when I was watching this week, was that, first of all, the lesson plans are getting better. So that's nice to see that there is improvement in lesson plans. The teaching practice is getting better as well. So some of the candidates are implementing some suggestions that the tutors are making. So that's nice to see. And one reflection that I had, because I think a lot of CELTs, when they go into the program, they have this assumption that they have to plan and then follow exactly the plan of their lesson, which is true. I mean, you shouldn't plan a lesson and then do something completely different in the classroom. However, I think that sometimes we're overlooking the demands of the students. And so that was something that started to become a little evident to me, that this is my perspective too. I'm not sure if this is helpful or not, but my perspective is, okay, so we're planning lessons because we have a specific aim and objective. We want to focus on a system or skill, etc. And so we plan the lessons so that there's some flow to it, so that it makes sense, so that there's logical, stages, and we go step by step through the target language or through the skills that we're building. However, we do need to think that even though we have a plan, and that plan might be wonderfully developed, in the classroom, there is that human aspect. And not to neglect that. And we did remind candidates recently that if you don't get through your entire plan because something comes up, an unanticipated problem or some other questions or something along those lines, that you need to cater to the needs of the students. That's not saying that the students get to do whatever they want in the class and they get to go off and tell stories, because we have some storytellers in the group, get to tell stories and just, do whatever they feel like. No, it needs to be obviously related to the lesson. And you need to maintain classroom management and control over the pace of the lesson. However, if it's clear that students are not grasping certain concepts, or they're not very clear on exactly what they should be doing, or they weren't very successful in employing some strategies or practicing some skills, teachers need to respect that there is a human aspect to teaching, that it's not mechanical. And even though we try to standardize it as much as possible so that everybody has a positive experience, that this is a messy business. And so when you're teaching, you do have to think about, how can I make sure that by the end of the lesson, I've achieved my aims, I've worked on whatever focus area I'm trying to work on, but at the same time that the students walk away with a sense of accomplishment. Because there was one student that commented at the end of the lesson last week, this past week, in this, it was the most recent teaching practice, that she was almost apologetic and said, some of us are faster and some of us are slower. I'm trying to keep up. And that's not a good thing for a student to feel, that they don't want to slow the group down because they feel as if they're the only ones that are not understanding what's happening in the lesson. And I think that differentiation and task development and classroom management skills go a long way in making sure that even if you have a slightly, and this group is not mixed ability, So even if you have slight differences in proficiency within a group, or you have a mixed ability group, that everyone can participate at their own level. It's challenging and engaging for everyone. So yeah, that was my reflection of the week, that we really need to be teaching the students, not teaching the lesson plan. Though the lesson plan helps us and guides us, and it's wonderful for teachers as a preparatory tool to kind of go through and think through exactly what we're trying to accomplish. Once you get in the classroom, it's quite messy, and you need to be able to adapt to that, and you need to be able to teach, I guess, is the best way to put it. You have to be able to teach. You have to be able to teach the students and recognize when they're having issues and recognize when they're succeeding in the things that they're doing. So that was week 7, CELTA. Yeah, was it week 7 already? Yep, CELTA week 7. And I will be back next week with more. And that's it.